everyone. Thank you for being with us on this episode of Heart, Mind, Money podcast with Perla, our founder of Latina Empire. I'm excited to get into this because this is part 2. Our last episode was really identifying what the ego identity was versus the truth identity. And we really dug into how to give people perspective on what to look out for, how to check in on themselves so that they can arrive at their truth, right? On this one, I really want to know, what were those hurdles? What were those milestones? What were those events in your life that really shook you up to get you to start on the path of living your truth?
So going back and studying your truth is not an easy task. I will have to say that. It's something that takes a lot of guts, excessive balls, like they say. Muchos huevos. Sí. Casi toda la docena.
Sorry.
Because knowing your truth is really, really studying where you came from, what happened, why it happened, what was your responsibility with what happened. And when you realize that a lot of what happens in your truth, in your story, is your responsibility, you have to go and forgive yourself. So you have to embrace that truth with all good and all bad. And most of the times it causes shame. And that's why people don't go into wanting to know their story or wanting to know their past.
That's why they avoid the healing process.
Yes, that's why they avoid the healing past. But we are made to avoid pain. Our receptors are made to sightline pain, right? And so if you don't know your truth, it's because you haven't studied your truth. And if you haven't studied your truth, it's because there's most likely something there that is kind of disturbing to remember or talk about or bring up.
Yeah.
Right? And so are you ready to know your truth? Are you ready to take on the role of digging in all that past where you most likely made mistakes and they were your calls? Because that's what makes you shameful. And in order to void that shame and peel off the shame, you have to go and dig up the layers of pain. And so that's why people sometimes they can't heal, because they're embarrassed to go back in.
They can't go back in.
And they can't go back in. And if they don't go back in and relive that, they can't forgive. And so they prefer to stay in the comfort of shame, not knowing the truth. But if you don't know your truth, how are you going to know what's next? Like, how are you going to push forward?
Share with us an example so people can really share openly about something that was challenging for you, that was that hurdle that took you back and going, okay, now I understand why. Now I understand why I did those things. Because in the moment, obviously, you don't know why, but that really took you for a loop.
So when I was 28 years old, right? I had just finished fighting, literally with teeth, nails, skin, and everything I had, fighting for one of my companies and the actual industry. Because at the state level, I was suing the state based on these new laws that had changed the benefits for children that were receiving therapy. And so I was on a high horse because dealing with the state, suing the state of Texas, I had to be super strong and super committed to rescuing this industry, right? And so I was on a high horse and I was on a power horse. And what that made me believe is that I knew it all and I fought so hard that I deserved it all, that it made me lose track of who I was as a woman in my marriage. Then my ego would tell me, hey, you deserve to be on a pedestal, right?
Because look at what you've done. Look at how hard you fought. You fought the state.
Yes. And so I started overpowering my husband at the time and his decisions, right? And
because you're like,
And
what are you doing?
And I started undermining him. And I started being like the to-do of everything, right? Like, yo decido y yo mando. Oh, you want to do that? Okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. And so I started kind of setting the
Sabotaging?
tone. I started setting the tone, sabotaging myself in my marriage, right? But I was so hooked on my ego that one time my husband, ex-husband, he is such a gentleman. He says no bad words. He's super, super, super respectful, right? That, well, we had a problem at communication because since he was so respectful and so tranquilo, he was such a calm soul, right? And I was more like about the fire. I was fearless.
And you were at another level
fearless,
because of
and I had
fighting.
been on this other level, right? Fighting.
Yeah.
I couldn't engage in a conversation because I would flare up the conversation super fast. Wow. And I wanted like decisions,
I can't see you that
and
way,
action, and I wanted it done now and give me an answer now, right? That he would retract from the situation and be like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you, resolve it, and let me know later. So with so many months of that, then I was like, I was being ignored, in other words, right? That one time I sent him this song in Spanish. I was out, I was at my house with my brother-in-law and my sister, and this song came out. And that song is in Spanish. Es una canción mexicana que dice que la vida es como un columpio, que a veces está arriba y a veces está abajo. Y cuando estás arriba o abajo, like, I'm gonna let you go, or like something like that, right? And so I sent him that song. And he calls me back the next day and he says to go...
Dilo en español.
En español me dice, vas y chingas a tu madre. And I'm like, ¿qué? Que tú like me vas a decir,
basically go to hell.
Go to hell. But go to hell. Like, saying that in Spanish is like dissing your mother. Yeah. Right? Because it's just like a common Mexican slang or a bad word. And I said, ¿qué? Que tú me vas a decir a mí que yo vaya mi madre, ni madres. ¿Sabes qué? Me divorcio. Because he had already been kind of ignoring me. And
in your perspective, his perspective is he didn't want to fight.
In his perspective, he didn't want to fight. But to me, he had been like ignoring me, and I wanted to like
fight.
I wanted that argument.
That rush.
I wanted that rush because I was on my high horse of, you know, who I was and what I'd done and what I'd overcome and all this stuff. My bullshit ego, and I said, ¿sabes qué? Me divorcio. And so he says, sí, pues dale gas. Like, he challenged me.
He said, you want a divorce? Fine.
Go ahead. Like, do what you got to do, right? So I was like, okay.
Now what?
So now what? Now my ballsy Perla and my ego was like, hey, you got to do
you didn't want
what you got to do. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just thinking about feeding my ego. Like, you don't challenge me to nothing, because if you challenge me, I'll fight you to the death, right? Mm-hmm. That was me back in the day, back in those days. And so I called my attorney in the middle of a birthday party that afternoon, and I said, hey, draft of my divorce. She said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What happened? And I said, he told me chinga tu madre. He's like, Perla, but what's wrong with you? Relax. And I said, no, nobody messes with me like that, and I'm not going to take that. And so I lost myself and my ego. And my ego, losing myself in my ego at that time was literally the start of my self-destruction. Because from there, I went on to bad mistake after bad mistake after bad mistake after bad mistake. I lost friendships. I lost my family. I lost my ex-husband.
You did things that you were ashamed of.
I did things that I was very, very ashamed of.
I really want people to understand they're not alone. We all do this.
Oh yeah, we all do this. My family,
and that's because you were at a high in you were wealthy. You had everything. Mm-hmm. but your ego was yelling at you.
My ego was driving me insane, and no, at that time, if you would tell me, Perla, you're losing it, like you need to relax, I'd
You'd be like, go to hell.
you don't know what you're talking about. Leave me alone. I know.
Like,
what
what
I'm
do
doing.
you have?
Like I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing, and I don't deserve this, and I'm leaving him, and all this stuff. And then from there starts a battle of, but I need love, and so what do I deserve? So then you go with all things that come your way.
Because
you
but
lose
internally you were, I want love, but you were feeling so much shame from what you had lost,
and you lose your center.
And you lose your center.
And you lose your center, and you negotiate. You start negotiating
Your
all your non-negotiables, and you start negotiating your values, your beliefs, and everything that I had built. I took the exact opposite. And so I was in a toxic relationship.
To punish yourself, you think?
But I was not with a toxic person by choice. It was not, I'm sorry, not by choice. I was too toxic.
You attracted a toxic person because you were
I was
toxic.
1000%.
Listen, everybody. Like, she had a beautiful marriage, peaceful,
a good marriage.
Everything was. She was going through a lot of turmoil at work, and took that turmoil home because you needed it to fight the government. You needed to be on that ego trip to fight the government, because then you'd be too weak otherwise, right? But you brought it home, and then you ruined the good that you had in front of you. Then that shame just made you more toxic, which attracted you a toxic relationship.
A toxic relationship that I take responsibility for creating, because the gentleman that I was with at that time, he's a great person. He's a good person in general, but
together
with me,
you were poison.
We were the death of us.
I believe that.
Death of us, because it was me getting out the worst of him, and it was him getting out the worst of me. Now, of course, we were together because there was some attraction therein. Yeah. But in general, we were just at war. And I continuously was at war for my balls, for my ego in this other relationship.
Which bled into work, family. Share that. Like, share how distant you became.
And so, no, it was a bad time in my life, and it was a time where I had no gigas to lead on my companies. I had no gigas to even take a phone call. I had no gigas to respond to text.
Like, no tenías no energy.
I just had so many emotional problems, not financial, not anything. They were
all... And the money couldn't heal.
And no, the money couldn't heal my pain. No, I was in this relationship. I would get a flight and appear in another city and go and have fun and go and do some shopping, and then 2 hours later, I felt super ashamed and super bad. And then my mom would call me. I would probably tell her something that was rude, right, and piss her off. And then she would, because there's cause and effect. If you cause something, you're gonna get an effect. So if you're causing disrespect, if you're being rude, hello, the action back is going to be equal or more. Yeah. So be careful what you put out in the world. Cause and effect. Because what you're going to get in return is equal or more to what you put out. So
good and bad.
Good and bad.
FYI,
so when
everybody.
I would answer the phone, ¿qué pasó, ma? ¿Qué quieres? ¿Qué pasó? No, qué huerca grosera, que no sé qué, que la chingada. Ay, está bueno, bye. I would hang up, right? And then I wouldn't talk to my mom for 2 days. And then I needed my mom because I would leave her my daughter, but I would have to call the nanny, check on my daughter. Like, it was just bad. And then I was ashamed. I wasn't with my daughter. Like, it was just horrible. It was just an overkill of myself. It was.
How long did that last?
Self-detriment. I was in a very, very bad place. That went on approximately since my egotistic trip started, I want to say my egotistical trip started, I want to say 2018. No, sorry. 2000, I'm sorry. It ended at the end of 2018, but it started in 2014. And I started with my lawsuit with the state in 2012. So 2012, 2013, I was still handling things. Fighting, not affecting my husband at the time. It wasn't killing us. But in 2014 to 2015, that's when it took a turn. In 2016, I got a divorce with this story that I just said. And my attorney's a good friend of mine, and she's still my, you know her. And so 2016, 2017 were the worst
2 years.
Because I kept on believing my ego, and I was making decisions on emotions based on my ego.
But it stemmed from shame, right?
I was affecting my life because I didn't want to accept the truth of the story.
Right.
I didn't want to accept what happened. And so when you don't accept what happened, you don't forgive yourself. And if you don't forgive yourself, how do you patch on to move forward? Yeah. So I was making bad decisions. I was affecting my daughter, my ex-husband, my current relationship, my mother, my sister, my brother, my father, everybody around me, because I am super family oriented. And at the time, I couldn't handle being with family too long, because if they would say like, "Hi, Perla, ¿cómo estás?" O "¿Cómo estás con esto?" O "¿Cómo estás con lo otro?" Like, don't even ask me, because I'm not full on with my company. I'm not full on in a relationship. I'm like, nor here nor there.
You didn't know. You didn't have clarity.
I didn't have clarity.
You didn't have any clarity.
I was lost. I was lost.
How did you start? How did you decide to find your truth? And then what was the process of healing?
So super interesting. I've never been a person that drinks or does drugs. And when I was so lost in this shame and this trips, I love music, and I love live music. You know, I love my Mexican farafara, mariachi, banda. I love people that play the piano, saxophone, you name it.
You love music.
Love music, because I speak to music. I just have conversations, right? With me and myself. I just have, conversations that are paced by the music that I'm listening to. And so when I was in this really, really bad situation, right, these time frame of years, I would constantly have parties at my house with my girlfriends, and I would bring in live music to like numb that pain, right? Like just get distracted, because when you're in pain, you need to get distracted. You need to find something that's gonna come and void.
And sometimes it's not a good thing.
What you've been feeling, yes. And so when I was doing these parties, the laughter, we're singing together, we're having fun. It sometimes was not like enough healing, right? So then I started drinking. And I had not drank alcohol since like 18, 19, 20. Well, Mexico, the legal age is 18 years old. And so I was like, a drink here, a drink there, just to like put my mind to sleep, right? And then the next day I would wake up with a hangover because my body's not used to that. And I would take like a Tylenol PM at 10 o'clock in the morning.
You'd go back, Mimi's?
I would go back to sleep. I would go back to sleep because I would wake up with a hangover and with the argument that I had over text message with the
bad relationship.
The bad relationship at the time. So I'd be like, what is this? Oh, I need to put myself to bed. And then when I would be like awake, right? I'd be like, now I know why people do drugs. They need to numb their pain.
Right.
So because I'm in healthcare and I know about the biology and the nature of how the body works, the body builds tolerance. So if you have one slice of pizza today, you have one slice of pizza tomorrow, the third or the fourth day, you're going to need one slice and a half. And then the fifth day, 2 slices. And if you keep on eating the same thing, same time, you're going to need 3 slices, etc., because your body builds tolerance. Just when you work out, You start with 10 pounds and then you go up to 15 pounds, 20 pounds, and then you can go up to 100 pounds, right? Because your body builds tolerance. So when I was feeling so sad and so emotionally disturbed, I was having my parties with the live music. That wasn't enough. It wasn't healing me. I started drinking. Then I was waking up with a hangover, and that wasn't enough. So then I was taking a Tylenol PM in the morning to go back to sleep to make my emotions go away. Numb my emotions, right? So then I realized, I said, that's why people use drugs. Because they're so hurt in their heart.
Okay.
I understand now. And then I used to be a person that was always giving others, always sharing food, sharing my resources, money, my vehicles, you name it, right? But when I was in that ugly time frame of my life, I wouldn't share nothing. So I realized that I stopped doing what made me happy. I stopped sharing. So then I realized, so people can't share what they don't have, because I had a memory of being such a cheerful, shareful soul, but then I wasn't one. So why? Because I was so inundated in my own pain that I caused. It was nobody's responsibility. I caused that because I allowed it. I started negotiating my non-negotiables, right? So then I said, so that's why.
Because you were assessing.
I'm always assessing. Yo siempre estoy reflexionando.
Which is a really good tip for everyone, is that you have to assess so that you can change.
Yeah,
if you don't
what you're going through.
If you don't change what is causing you pain, then you just live pain.
Yes.
So
1000%. So then I said, so that's why I don't share, because I'm so broken. And I'm so broken, so I don't have nothing to share. When I used to share was because I was in so much abundance. So then that's how I know people can't share what they don't have. Okay? So then now I knew. So in between these erratic episodes of argument with the relationship I had, I would leave to another city and I would fly out other parts of the country or the world.
Seeking healing.
Seeking just to get away and get distracted to numb my pain. Right?
Okay.
So I would go shopping, and then 2 hours later, my ideas are back in my head, and I'm back thinking about, what did he say? What did I say? What did I do? How did I challenge him, etc. Right? So then now I know that going out and spending money doesn't work. Now I know that my live music is not helping me, not numbing me enough. Now I know that drinking alcohol is not healing me enough. Now I know that Tylenol PM is not healing me enough,
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I get it. I have to go in and take responsibility and heal what I've done. Like, go in there, heal what I've done. So then I started looking for help, started speaking to professionals, priests, coaches, transformational coaches, neuro-linguistic programmers, love coaches, you name it, tarot reading, angel reading, shamanic,
astrology.
Name it, astrology, sound bowls, aromatherapy. I started trying it
Everything.
all. And so every time I would leave and I would come back to the relationship, I was more awake. And I was more conscient that if I was in a toxic relationship, it was because it was my decision, it was my responsibility, and I caused that because I accepted that. But then I would go and I would come back, and I would go and I would come back, because your goggles are never shattered until they shatter, right?
Yeah.
And when I was in the coaching sessions, they would tell me, you have to transform.
Or you're wearing goggles. You got to shatter them. You got to take the freaking goggles off. Yeah.
And know your truth.
To know your truth.
Without ego.
The perspective from those goggles is ego.
Because the decisions that I was making, the issues that I had in this relationship were because of my ego.
Yeah.
I was being the same Perla that broke up her marriage. So, hello, cause and effect. What are you going to change? You're not going to change nothing. You're going to get the same outcome.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so when I decided I needed to change that, I needed to change me first. And
Right.
I needed to go and accept the bad things that I had done all the way back since I filed divorce, because it takes a buildup of behaviors to get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a buildup of mistakes that I did to be able to take responsibility. And that made me, I had to try at accepting that responsibility with numerous coaches, with numerous therapies.
It took several times over.
It didn't happen in one therapy.
No.
It happened throughout 3 years.
You started therapy and it took 3 years. You started different therapy modalities.
I started different therapy modalities in the 3 years that I was in the relationship after my divorce. During the 3 years, Perla still had the egotistical behaviors that led her to get her divorced, right?
And get
to
into
file
a
for
bad,
divorce.
toxic relationship.
It allowed me to get into a bad toxic relationship, and as I would leave the relationship and disappear on him, I would go somewhere to travel or end up shopping or end up getting a therapy. But it took me 3 years to heal from the whole puzzle that I created throughout 5 years.
And it had to do with a very severe shattering of the goggles.
And it had to do with a very severe shattering at the goggles, that the shattering of the goggles took 3 years. So it's one thing when you're aware of what you're doing wrong and you try to fix it, but it takes a while to accept responsibility to then forgive yourself. So if I would put it to you this way, every therapy I went to, every healer I went to was like a tiny bit of responsibility. Like
a little more self-awareness.
Like a little bit more self-awareness. And then another session, a little bit more self-awareness.
But
and
you were
a
seeking.
little bit more forgiveness for Perla. Because you don't forgive somebody else unless you forgive yourself, right? And so every time I was going through that, I was just forgiving myself a little bit more until I unleashed the truth. My goggles shattered. And when my goggles shattered and I fully forgive myself, I knew that I was not coming from an egotistical perspective,
because you were
that
vulnerable.
I was making decisions based on what was true and right to my value system, right? I said, I've done my part. I'm moving on, and I'm letting him and those around me move on.
Right.
I'm unleashing myself and all those around me.
And getting there, I really want people to understand that getting there is a process, like you said. You have to seek, you have to be ready. You're ready to confront the pain, confront the shame, which you didn't really know you were doing. You were just seeking something to heal
Me at the
heart.
moment. Yes.
Yeah. So, but once you are aware, okay, it's my fault. I'm taking responsibility. I'm going to start to seek to heal that and no longer feel the shame, no longer carry that baggage. Now, what begins to happen is the practice of what you've learned. And then the situations, new situations in your life that come up where the ego could pop up again. You're like, whoa.
Calm down. Ego.
Calm down. Let me use all my coaches and all my teachings and all my therapies and let me implement in this moment. Correct? Mm-hmm. So when you realize this and you healed and you now started to see, like, you were starting to attract obviously beautiful people back into your life.
Slowly.
You were healing what you had caused with your beautiful, amazing family that I can say because I get to now experience it every day. You were starting to heal that, and they were already ready to like take you back in 5 seconds, right? No, they weren't? No. Tell me. Because I can't even see how they wouldn't be like.
No, they had lost trust in me.
Oh.
And it took me a while to gain their trust back. And when I would be like, okay, I'm ready, I'm here, I'm going to show up to work, right? Every day I'm coming to the office, they'd be like, okay, vamos a ver mañana. And I'd be like, oh, like that would want to piss me off. Because my ego, Perla, would be like, ay, párenle su pinche pedo. No quiero dramas.
I made these money.
Yo, esta es mi oficina y vengo si quiero bien y si no, no vengo. That would have been ego Perla, right? But then I'd be like, okay, mañana vemos, because I knew I had to give them the opportunity to gain trust in me again. And I want to say that that trust, getting back into myself and my self-love, was started in April 2019. And I want to say that it was already COVID, summer of 2020. And sometimes the spurts of distrust would come up for my family because I left them with PTSD of how bad I was. People in your circle,
I
when you
understand
hurt
that.
them so much, they stay like post-traumatic trauma.
And they see something and they're like, is it coming back? Is it
yes.
happening again?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so after I lost myself, I got loster and loster, and then I started finding my journey way back. I want to say that took 5 years. And then another year and a half after that to gain the trust and love back fully 100% from my family.
And that's where I would imagine, Perla, that you were practicing with every fiber of your being to live through love and not ego.
Yes.
Because that must have been so hard.
I have to fight to attain my ego. It's super hard. It's not easy. You have to be constantly checking and balance, checking and balance, checking and balance.
Wow. So when did you realize that process of heart, mind, and money is the method that you are teaching with Latina Empire, that you are creating these resources that you pour into weekly into this space where people can feel vulnerable to go through the healing process, and you're giving them the resources. But all this was created from all of that pain and the recovery of coming back into your truth. When did that happen?
The Heart, Mind, and Money was in 2019. I saw the big picture and I said, now I went through it. Now I know who Perla is, because I remember my joyous Perla, right? Pure of joy and love, and how she was. I remember the Perla going through a peak of high success at a very young age. I remember the Perla getting married, being a mom for the first time, having a growing company, going through the challenges of a changing industry, which is healthcare.
And it changed you.
Fighting for everything she had to rescue that company and her employees. And then I got to meet the Perla that was so egocentric, so empty of emotions, because she lost herself, that she was now extremely broken. And when she was extremely broken, she was rude, she was aggressive, she was mean, she was disrespectful, and she didn't care about anybody around her. And so in that trajectory, I said, so if I reverse engineer that, now I know why people fall into drugs, into crime, into suicide, into
what keeps them, and also what keeps them from their success,
into incarceration. It's pain. It's pain. So if more of us heal from our pain and we have an abundance of joy, we will have an overflow of love, because when you have abundance, you have to share. It's by ripple effect. You share. I've been there.
You are there.
At that time in 2019, I used to be that person, but now I wasn't that person. So I said, so if I'm not that person, it's because I'm in so much pain. Yeah. So now
which
I know,
is limiting you from abundance.
So that's where my foundation, Love Soldiers Foundation, was born, which is love soldiers. You always have to be on guard for love for yourself. If you don't guard yourself like a soldier, what does a soldier do? They guard. They're protecting. They're watching. They're filtering. They're analyzing, right? You have to be a love soldier for yourself. You have to constantly be watching out for the distractions and the battles that might want to sip in and mess up your emotions. Because if you allow that somebody messes up your emotions or takes a toll, or you
Somebody or
decided
something.
to make a cause that is going to affect your emotions, right? Then you're allowing your emotions to become distress. And when they become distress, they have pain. And when you have pain, you need voids to heal the pain. Then by consequence, by ripple effect, you have to recourse to food, music, partying, drugs, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs.
Use in excess, you mean, yeah. Yeah, right?
Being rude, being aggressive with others, so that can void your pain, right? And so I said, okay, so love soldiers have to go and rescue themselves before they go and rescue other embattled souls lost in the emotional sickness war.
Yeah.
And I started writing this book, and I will finish it next year. It's in my to-do list. But I predicted an emotional sickness war in 2019. And that's exactly what happened in COVID. And if today we have an increased rate of crime, suicide, drug abuse, homelessness, incarceration, it's because those people are hurt. They're hurt from their emotions. They didn't heal their emotions at some point in time, whatever affected them. That's why you constantly have to be filtering and healing your emotions, because if you let them there, they will take a toll on you in a point in time of your life.
And how did that tie in? How did that Latina Empire? Because I know it's our sister company. Like we that's our cause. Latina Empire's cause is Love Soldiers Foundation, but Latina Empire was born from.
So Love Soldiers Foundation in 2020 started doing campaigns around the country with another foundation out of New York called Hispanic Star. And we were feeding people and giving them essential items around the country. Procter & Gamble was one of our biggest supporters. They donated almost $7 million worth of essential items to us that we disseminated around 86 cities and 400,000 families. And so when I would go to these drives, the people would tell me, oiga, pero ¿cómo le hago para trabajar y salir de una relación abusiva? Like, how do I get an abusive relationship? What do I need to do?
What do I get out of it?
And then I'm like, oh, that's a big story, because I had been there.
Yeah.
And it's a big journey. I can't tell you this.
I can't give you a bag
now,
with the
right?
Yeah.
And so that kept on happening and happening and happening. And as I would get invited to be a guest speaker in different stages, and I would talk about my story, right? They would say, Perla, how do I do that? How do I get out of this? Like, give me the tips, give me the skills. What do I need to do? And I'd be like, whoa. So I spoke to different female movements to implement courses to help ladies out of this, right? That I would support them with Love Soldiers. And people would say, that's a lot of work. Like, my organization is not about that. We're more of empowerment. We talk, we get together and networking. And I'd be like, no, we need something deeper. And so with a good friend of mine, that's a transformational coach, she had been working with me on these mentorship programs with Love Soldiers Foundation. And so we went through a little issue with another coach in Latina Empire. And then I had to bring my good friend to be a transformational coach into the heart, mind, and money part, because people need to heal from here first before they get to challenging their heart and before they get to even want to fill your pockets. Because I know from experience that you could have all the money in the world, but if you're lonely, if you're upset, if you're broken, look, all the money in the world is for nothing, right? And so that's how Latina Empire, it came from the heart of Love Soldiers Foundation, and it was just adopted to impact women, because I truly, truly believe that if you heal one woman, that one woman most likely has kids, or she's in a nucleus of a family, and that one person will go in and spread the abundance of life, and love and joy and peace, right?
And teach what she's learned to do that.
That's what's important. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed.
And that's where the heart, mind, and money come from. It really came from my findings, getting in tune with what Love Soldiers nonprofit started as and how the book started. But then as life took me, it and I just flow, right?
Yeah.
It just took me to set it up for women. And thanks to you, G, I mean, we've been working together. I mean, G has, you helped me when I used to have a magazine. Remember the magazine? That was 13 years ago. Incredible. But in Love Soldiers Foundation, you were one of my PR, right? And we were talking about, we kind of worked on how we were going to soundboard and how we're going to launch this around the country. And then we did it with the food campaigns. And you were somebody that blessed me with an extremely good contact here in town to get that going. And then we got a little bit disconnected. And then after I was at that last conference in October of 2021, and the ladies were like, we need this. How are we going to do this? And they wouldn't leave me alone.
They were like, what's next? I remember you telling me that.
That's when I came to
I
you.
I just came from this conference, and they're like wanting what's next. How do I make that happen?
How do I do that? Yeah. And I needed you as an expert in lady movements, because you belong to an American lady movement, right? That I respect, and I'm also a part of, a member of, and that's how this journey started. Yeah. But the importance of healing your heart, to challenge your mind and fill your pockets, it's what will get you balanced and centered to live the culmination of a happy, joyous, free, wonderful, powerful life.
That's so, and you say it, and I want to share with our listeners that it's a choice. And you can choose today. And is it a journey? Yes. Is it a process? Yes. But are there resources? Absolutely. And you can, find your center, and maybe it's outside of Latina Empire, or if you want to be a mana, it's right here for you with Latina Empire.
Yes.
You can start with our Mana Lounge. You can find more information and any of our social medias at the Latina Empire, or you can go to thelatinaempire.com. But it's there for you. And you, Perla, I want you to share how they can get in touch with you if they have a question, or if they feel like like you said something that resonated something, and they need a little bit more of guidance. Where can they find you?
Yes, so my social media handles is Reflexiona con Perla. You can write to my email, perla@thelatinaempire.com. You can reach our offices, check us out at thelatinaempire.com. Reach us. If you need help, if you don't knock on the door, nobody's going to open the door for you. But if you knock on my door, I will open the door. We'll open the door. That's what it's about. It's about taking the step to knocking the door. No pasa nada.
Yeah. It's a community of healing. That's where we all need to start.
To get to your higher self.
And daily we heal. Daily we have a choice. Either heal, or we aggravate a situation.
Or carry on the baggage. Que hueva.
Let the baggage go, guys. Ew. Let the baggage go.
For that. Let it go.
Thank you, Perla. We will see you on the next round of Heart, Mind, Money podcast.
Yes.
Thank you for all you do.
Sending y'all much love.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to Heart, Mind, and Money podcast with Perla, the awesome Perla.
Thank you.
Yes, I want everybody to look into thelatinaempire.com. Look more into what this whole mission is. Also, on all our social medias is at the Latina Empire. At the Latina Empire, and to connect with Perla, who answers every single comment, message. We'll send you a voice message. We'll ask you to send her your WhatsApp. She will answer anything, any problem, any advice. I mean, you're pretty remarkable at that. And you can find Perla on Instagram at Reflexiona
con Perla.
Reflexiona con Perla. But we are all across social media, and Perla is always, every single day, pouring into you through all social platforms at the Latina Empire. And we also have our community at the Mana Lounge that you can find more information at any of the links on any of our social medias. And we would love to have you as one of our manas.
We've got to keep learning.
We got to keep learning. We got to keep healing our heart.
Healing your heart.
Challenging our minds.
Challenging your mind to fill your pockets.
To fill your pockets. Thank you guys for having us.